Well, we are back and we've got some good news. Two things. One, as you guys can see, the garage is empty. The GT100 is at the upholstery shop finally. So we have some garage space, so that is good. Good reason number two is that we can get started on our second project. You can see it's an 02 Suburban K2500. That is not going to be the new project. But what is good is that has a really good 6-liter LS and a 4L80 transmission, and it's 4-wheel drive. Which is what we're going to use that for. So we're pulling the engine trans from that, and I can get rid of this. I live in a neighborhood, as you can see, and this vehicle needs to get off of my street so I don't get turned in by neighbors, because as you can see, we've got a lot going on over here at the Factory Fresh garage. Plan is, though, with this bad boy, some of you have seen a little bit on it. It's a 1994 Chevy, or actually it's a GMC OBS, old body styles, what that stands for, or GMT 400, but it's a single cab short bed. It is 4-wheel drive, which we're not building a 4-wheel drive vehicle like we'll probably do with the Jeep. We'll for sure do with the Jeep, but what we are going to do, we're going to first get a 6-liter 4L80 good strong trans. I wanted it 4-wheel drive, so if I'm not building a 4-wheel drive vehicle but I need a 4-wheel drive trans, what am I doing? Well, we are going to build an all-wheel drive slam down street truck. We'll get into the details later, but I need a front diff that's all-wheel drive from a donor. I already have it. I need an all-wheel drive transfer case. I didn't want selectable, I wanted all-time all-wheel drive. I could put some heavy-duty CV axles and just rip this thing and maybe turbo it and just build a 500-600 horsepower street truck that has all-wheel drive, slam down coilovers. I may do independent rear suspension, so a lot to get into. But today we're going to start to kind of, number one is get rid of this lawn art here we have, because some people don't love it. So I have space to pull it in. We've got the gantry crane out. As you guys can see, we kind of use this with the body swap for the Mustang, the GT100 build. So I've never pulled an engine with this, but the good news is I don't need anything special off of the Suburban or like to keep it or anything. I'm just really going to take everything I could possibly use for the engine swap, which is going to be the LS 6-liter. It's a Gen 3, and then the 4L80 transmission. I'll probably pull the radiator and all that stuff out too, just in case I need it. But I mean, it runs good. It's high mileage. Let me give you guys a little gander here. It is high mileage, but it was maintained really well. Oh, dang it. Okay, battery's dead. I'll show you here and then we'll get her started. So behold the glory of the LS. I know we just got off of a Ford build, or we're still doing it. I'm not attached to certain brands and models. I'm more of a hot rodder. So do I like the LS? Yeah, I love the LS. I love the Coyote. I love the LS because it's cheap, reliable. I can get a ton of parts for them. I can work on them really easily, and you can throw them in a lot of stuff and they're fun. So I love the Coyote too. High revving, a little bit more pricey. Gen 2s can handle a lot of power, but I don't get weird about that. So yeah, to answer some of the haters, I'm gonna do an LS, but it isn't a Chevy. You Chevy boys, let's get after it. We're gonna jerk this thing out, probably take all the radiator stuff. I'm gonna plan on probably running the factory engine computer, and for a couple reasons we'll kind of get into initially, at least before we turbo it. I don't know, we'll see. But really we can just get after this and tear it out and not have to worry about any of the body or taking care of stuff. So I'm hoping we can get that out today. We'll kind of get in the details, but here's our front diff. We're gonna end up mounting this in the OBS over there. It's gonna give us all-time all-wheel drive. I believe it's 373 gear, which I can get a donor whole IRS assembly from Camaro or Mustang, and it'll be 373 and do independent rear suspension, which would be cool for a street truck. And then here is our NV149, come from early Escalades, Denali's, things like that. Same with this. So luckily this transfer case a little harder to find, but it is all-wheel drive, viscous coupler. We have to change the input shaft and do a few things. We'll get into all that once we get there, but we have the two main pieces and then the engine and transmission. There. See, she purrs. Let's see what the mileage. Oh, I was wrong. I don't know if you guys can see that. 357,000 miles. So the guy I bought it from, you can hear it runs good. No ticks. So a lot of times higher mileage LS stuff like this, you gotta worry about like ticking, like the upper valve train has a little tick just from stuff being wore out. We'll probably go through the upper valve train and replace everything because we can do a cam and do lifters and valve springs and stuff like that. Pretty cheap, and that's really usually the problem, but it says 357. The guy told me it was engine swapped and they put in a lower mile engine. I think that's probably BS because he was just trying to get people interested in a 360,000 mile vehicle. I mean, this is what matters. You can hear it. It's really just, I mean, it's running smooth. So I did do an oil change. Can't remember what, some engine clean thing to kind of get the sludge out of this. Higher mileage, that's kind of what I got to worry about, so I'll do that a couple times. Overall, man, can't really complain, and I bought it for an absolute steal. I bought the whole vehicle for about what I would have probably paid for a transmission or just the engine. I'm gonna rip this out and then we'll scrap the rest of this and get it out of here. So let's get this pulled in here and start picking it apart and see if we can get that engine pulled out. We have plenty of room to get this thing up on the gantry and pull it out at a nice angle. And I'm not gonna have to come up and out of the hood and try to pull it all out. Let's just start pulling apart all this front stuff, get the radiator drained, all the core support pieces out, and kind of see how we can get some access to the front of this truck to allow us to pull this motor out easily. All right, boys, well, we have got the 6.0 and 4L80 out. Royal pain in the butt doing this with a four-wheel drive front. The oil pan clearing this was a nightmare, and then we actually had to cut a big chunk out of that cowl just to get everything out. Day 2, did that, and we finally got it out. And then right as I get the engine out, my daughter calls me and I have to pick her and her friends up from softball. So I hurriedly rushed to get this thing out so I can lock the house up and close the door. And now I'm getting oil all over my driveway. Let's try to one person push this thing out using my little chalk slide method, and we'll get it back out on the street. Hopefully get rid of that, and then we have a lot of cleaning up to do. We've got the LS out of the burb, and we need to start tearing this thing down. We took the transmission off, 4L80E. We're going to use that. It's off to the side. We have a shift kit. We'll end up putting that in that. Real basic stuff, just cleaning up everything. We're going to use factory intake, factory injectors, all the accessory stuff in the front for the most part. May replace the water pump just because while we're in there, just so we don't have to do it later. We do have a whole box of parts over there. We'll get into that once we get there. I've got a set of cleaned up heads. We're gonna do basically all the upper valve train between the springs and push rods. We're gonna put a cam in it, obviously, but we'll get to that once we get this thing tore down, cleaned up real good, and then we'll start putting it back together with some of those good parts. Let's do it. Ready? We gotta take this side of the head off.
Okay, Dad.
Fix the extension. Just make sure you don't get any dirt in the engine if you're touching stuff, okay? We don't want to get dirt down.
I'm not touching anything.
Down where it's supposed to be really clean. We want to keep it clean, okay? We'll loosen these head bolts up.
I didn't know those head bolts are that big. I thought they're
There's
like
a whole bunch of them.
this.
And then we'll lift this head up.
Oh, you're really strong. You're strong as a You're strong as a monster jam truck.
That's a fact.
What does that mean?
Yep, you're right.
Oh. I was like, what? I'm wrong? Somebody's emailing me.
Someone's texting me?
Yeah, while you're doing that. You're like, no, I'm not answering.
Like, we're trying to build some sweet cars around here.
Yeah. And they're like, then open up.
Alright, where's my other? There it is. Okay, let's take the.
Here's a light.
Oh, thanks. Just got this one last bolt and then I'm gonna pull the head off.
I think it's the head's almost.
I
think the head's gonna fall off.
It should stay, hopefully.
Did it stay when you're using it on this side?
Yeah, because the bolts are still kind of halfway in there. Okay. Now I gotta lift it out.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Want me to grab the bolts for you?
Move this out of the way. Make sure you don't play with any of this stuff because we don't want it to fall.
Want me to grab the bolts out?
Nope, I'm going to leave them there so I know where they go. That way when I put the new heads on there.
I'm just taking a shine at it. Okay, let's see.
Oh, see the pistons? Oh no, there's dirt in there. Hold on, I'm going to vacuum it. Well, as you can see, we have got the engine pulled apart. Suburban is gone. Got the 4L80 out. Cleaned it up a little bit. Super greasy. Didn't get too crazy with it. We're not going to paint it or do anything like that. Got all the grease off of it so we could kind of handle everything. Got the heads pulled off. I do have some replacement heads. They're 317s, which have a pretty big chamber. Lower compression heads. Not great unless you add boost. That's kind of why I got them. We'll probably eventually either turbo or supercharge this thing. Got some heads down there with some better valve springs put on it, and basically a lot of the upper valve train cam and stuff like that we'll do initially. Pulled off all the parts, have them on the table just so we can. This thing was super greasy. Overall though, with that high of mileage, if you look at the engine, we've got some deposits here, not a big deal, but if you look at the cylinder bores, they look good. So I'm not concerned. Here, let me see if my light works. I'm not too concerned about anything. It's dead. There's no, I don't know if I'd say there's cross hatching in there. but there's definitely no scuffs. There's no ridge up here. A lot of times at the very top, if you look right there, you'll get a ridge from just wearing out this cylinder bore. So nothing there. Our lifters are in there. You can see the cam has some nice little wear on it from the lifters. Again, not super concerned. I'm replacing lifters, push rods. Oh, that's bright. Lifters, push rod. We're gonna put a turbo cam in it from, I think, who do we get it from? TSP or BTR, Brian Tooley Racing. Can't remember. We'll get into all the parts we're gonna install. Obviously, we'll do a different oil pan, a little bit better clearance. We'll replace the oil pump, timing gear, chain that is, and the gear, and we'll clean all this up. I wanna get all the deposits off of here, off these pistons, so we'll keep the chain on it till we can clean up everything real nice. We'll clean the block up. You can see it's still pretty rough, just so we could possibly paint it and just have everything kind of look good once we get it back together. We have new head gaskets, nice LS9 stuff. Probably replace some of the sensors just because while we're in here, it's going to be easy to do. Do the water pump, but really everything else, we're going to use a factory intake. Again, just need to clean it all up. Let's get started with that. Kind of just piecing through everything, scrubbing it up, and getting it ready to reassemble with some better parts. I think we got the block pretty much how we want it. We need to get the oil pan. We've got a aftermarket that's a little bit shallower. That's all set up. A BTR cam. Most of the stuff I bought for this engine were Brian Tooley Racing, so they seem like pretty quality stuff. We got a stage 2 turbo cam. Eventually we may put some boost to her, but it'll run good NA on that cam, and once we turbo it. We're gonna start with that, but once you put a cam in something with a bunch of lift, we've got to kind of adjust the heads. I've got them over here. These are the same heads. They're just factory heads off another engine I had. I had these go to machine shop and just had them clean the head up, and then we did put good quality valve springs in here. You can see they're double springs and they're set up for a little bit higher lift cam. So you definitely want to do that when you're putting a cam in, or a high lift cam. One other thing we're going to do with these upgraded valve springs are the rocker arms here. So the sketchy thing with these rocker arms is higher mileage, they're full of bearings, and the bearings can kind of let go. And then when the bearings let go, you fill your motor with a bunch of little needle bearings. Again, we got some little trunnion kit for our rocker arms. So if you guys can see that, it's pretty straightforward. You have the trunnion and different snap rings and the new roller bearings, and you'll attach them on these trunnions with the caps and then the snap rings. We've got everything kind of set up, and there's actually I love these instructions for DIY guys, because you can see the assembly process, and it's basically using sockets with Harbor Freight Arbor Press, which I bought, and just sockets to do it all yourself. So I love instructions like this where you could just go do it yourself, and it's not using specialty tools for everything, because I'm sure just like you guys, I'm not buying specialty tools for every single little thing that I'm doing randomly. I'll just make it work with a socket or a rubber mallet or whatever. Shout out to BTR for actually making do-it-yourself instructions for car guys that build stuff in their garage and don't have specialty tools. We're going to unpack the Arbor Press, get it set up, and then basically go through all 16 of these rocker arms. That was a little piece I was still trying to get out. So there we go. Let's give it up close. Those look smooth, nothing's wonky, and we just have a rocker arm that is ready to accept new bearings. Trunnion through the middle. Now we're going to put some retaining washers, which just basically look like this on either side, and then we'll snap ring it on both sides, and then we'll do that 15 more times. Wonderful. Wunderbar. All the heads, the rockers, the springs and the rocker arms with the different trunnion upgrades so we can handle a little bit bigger camshaft. We've got our push rods here. We've got, what else do we got? We got our lifters, some sweet LS7 lifters. We got a new oil pump. We have, we've got some RTV for that stuff. Different things for the pan. We got a new oil pan over there, new oil pan gasket. Here's the new front retaining ring for the camshaft. We've got a timing set in here, so we'll replace that stuff. Let me put this back so we don't gunk it up. Let's actually just put it right here. So basically we kind of got everything like we talked about for the upper valve train. We're going to pull out these lifters. Everything is cleaned up. We'll take the chain, timing chain off. Everything is set top dead center. So if you notice this mark here correlates with this mark here. You can see my piston is here. Both these lifters are all the way in the down position. So it's, you know, rocked up. The valves are not open. So you need to be in that compression stroke or power stroke where you'll feel compression either through, do it a couple ways. Through the number one piston hole, you can kind of hold your finger there, rotate through the cycle. You should feel compression, meaning both the valves are closed and the piston's traveling up, creating that compression. You'll feel the pressure on your finger. As you do that, you'll start to see the dot, if you guys can see it right here on the crank and then right there on the cam. So that kind of verifies we're at top dead center, which is important when we put in a cam. Let's get into that. Cam's coming out, pulling the lifters out. We'll get the new oil pan set up, which this is the gasket, and I don't know if I showed you guys this yet. This is kind of a cheap reproduction, like a Holly version, but off of, I don't even know what website I bought it, but you know, it's like $300, pretty reliable, or pretty, I should say, economical. We'll see if it's reliable or if it all works, but that's the old pan with the huge sump. This one's going to be a lot better with a lot less protrusion on the bottom. So that's basic rundown. I'll get you guys set up and let's start pulling this thing apart. Get the new parts in so we can paint it and then get the heads on and then get our intake on and move on to the transmission transfer case. Okay, let's do it. Well, first things first, we need to get the lifters out. I do have, if you guys ever pull this apart, I've done a couple LS engines. These little LS rebuild manuals are pretty nice for, I use them for just like specs and order of operation for things, kind of checking clearances. They're pretty cheap and they're fun reads, fun references to just kind of make sure you're taking your time on certain tolerances and stuff like that with stuff you need to do. And mainly it's nice for specs or for torque specs too. So let's get all the lifters out of here. I already pulled the trays out. We do have new trays for our lifters. One thing to kind of be not concerned about, but aware of. So these are LS7 lifters. Something that's common, the trays sit down in here like this and hold these lifters in these little cups right here. The lifters are not solid rollers with the camshaft and can wear them down. They're roller. They have little rollers on them that spin on the camshafts. Important thing to realize is these are squared. You put the lifters in and the rollers line up with the camshaft perfectly. So if these wear out and the lifter starts to spin in here, it's going to get the lifter all cockeyed, and then when that camshaft spins and the lifter's sideways, it starts to wear stuff out. Bad things happen. My experience, these high mile LSs are really good as long as, I mean, a lot of times you just have to replace that upper valve train because that stuff wears out. I'm not going to gap rings or anything. Maybe when we do turbo it, we'll pull everything out and gap the rings, but right now I'm not going to worry about it. The one thing I am concerned about is the cam bearings. So cam looks pretty good. We'll pull the old one out and look at those bearings. I do not want to replace cam bearings. What they say with the cam bearings is, you know, the best way to handle cam bearings on LS, just don't look at them. They'll be okay. Just don't look at them, because if I look at them, I hope they don't look bad because I don't want to have to replace them. We'll see. Let's get these lifters out. Top dead center, which it is, and then pull this off, pull the cam, new cam goes in. Let's just hope we don't hear a clangety clack and a cam bearing falls out of this block into the thing, because have I mentioned I don't want to replace cam bearings? All right, let's go with the little guy. So if you look, it's not, if you guys can see, it's not too bad. We don't have any grooves or any, I mean, there's some, you can see some marks where the lifters were on there, but no scratches or gouges or anything crazy from what I can tell. To be completely honest with you guys, I don't really know what I'm talking about. So don't take any of my advice here if you're rebuilding your LS. I've done a few, you know, I'm just in here having fun. We are concerned about these LS, the cam bearings here. Let me get you, dang it, I don't got you guys up on this. Here, let me take you off of this real quick. So while I'm doing this, let me explain what my concerns were, and that was cam bearings, not super fun to replace. I've never done it. You need special tools. You need to line the oiling holes. It's hard to see. Just generally a pain in the ass that I don't want to deal with. Well, I can see copper on the bearings, like it wore the copper. So I kind of did the most reliable search I could, which is I just Googled it and found a bunch of forums with guys talking about it. So here's what we're dealing with. You can kind of see right here, you see that copper in the normal bearing. There's no gouges. It's smooth to the finger. I don't feel anything, but I can just feel, or I can just see this copper. So I was kind of concerned about that. Like, man, do I need to do this? So apparently factory GM cam bearings, and I don't know if you guys know something I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's probably gonna be too late by the time this posts because I'm putting the cam in. Good news, almost everyone said, hey, even GM Tech said you're gonna see, they've never not seen copper on the bearings when they've installed or pulled out or put in a new cam. So not to be concerned. I don't feel any gouges. I'll go around and see if I can get my finger in on all these cams bearings to see if I feel any gouges or anything. Apparently this is completely normal. We're gonna send it. Let's keep her going. Step one, grab your sweet new camshaft. Okay, oh, what am I doing? Idiot. It's backwards. I gotta put it in this way. I'm oiling the wrong tip. And just gently placing the hole. All right, so we begin the new camshaft install. BTR Stage 2 Turbo Cam. Should run good on NA, but also give us a good little power boost once we decide to either turbo it or supercharge it. Going through the cam retainer plate, everything is O-ringed on these LS motors, which is very nice because you don't have to deal with RTV and gaskets and making a mess. So replace the cam retainer plate, start working into the timing chain and sprocket, replace that stuff as well as the oil pump. We did end up putting the oil pump on here, and then later I took it off and recentered it with the pulley and recentered that front harmonic balancer, and then recentered that front plate, the timing chain cover with that front pulley. So that's a way you can do it. You can also use shims and shim it down. But Melling actually advises to do it the way I did, which is center it with the pulley and then rotate it a couple times and then secure everything to torque. So we talked about the oil pan and the pickup tube, and I kind of got a cheap economical version of a Holley. It was a knockoff, you know, probably spent $200 on it. Kind of regretted it. You can see the pickup tube ended up not meeting up great with the O-ring into the actual pump, which is a little bit of a concern. I don't want to get an oil leak because of that or lose pressure, but we will see. I got it sealed nice and good after bending the tube a little bit. That crank scraper pan also was hitting the oil pan, which was causing clearance issues, so we ended up cutting that down to fit this oil pan on flush. Not a big deal, just kind of things you got to do here. You can see we're cutting it down to clear that new pan, and we got all that secured, going through the torque specs and everything. Again, new gaskets. This motor was super greasy, so I wanted to really be diligent about replacing every single O-ring surface so I wasn't going to get oil leaks in the future. Taped everything off, had it cleaned up nice, just painted it a gloss black, used an engine spray paint that can handle the temps, and then went into the lifters, replaced the lifters, lifter trays, LS9, multi-layer head gaskets, got the heads installed. Buddy came over and had a beer with me while I was working on the engine. Started replacing installing the rocker arms that we put the trunnion upgrades in, and I ended up stripping this last hole right here. You can kind of see I'm putting a helicoil in and retensioning tapping it with that and got it in, got everything to torque. So torque spec, it worked out good. And then went on to the head covers, the valve covers, and again, just replaced all the O-rings on everything, replaced the O-rings on the bolts, and every single O-ring surface, I got new O-rings and replaced them. To include the factory fuel rail, we pulled the injectors, cleaned them out real good, and replaced all the O-rings in that too. They were a little loose feeling, so I was a little concerned. We'll see once we put some fuel pressure to it. But we do have all new O-rings. They weren't quite as snug as the factories, but I guess we will see how she rips once we get her started. All right, guys, we are going on a little drive to check out the GT100. So a lot of you have been asking where it's at. We've been working on the 94 OBS build, and the GT100 is getting upholstery done. So I am not going to learn to sew and stitch and do upholstery and stuff. So I brought it to the shop here we're pulling up right now, which is in this building right here called Fox Valley Restoration. Went and talked to them. Super positive, cool people in there working. So let's go check out the GT100 and see what it looks like. All right, guys, so I'm here with Hayden at Fox Valley Restoration. This is where the truck is at, just doing some upholstery. I didn't want to learn to sew and stitch and do all this ridiculous stuff.
Plastic work.
Yeah, plastic work. Came by and talked to Caden, was a super cool dude. A lot of guys, I went to upholstery shops, and they kind of were off put by, you guys know, the GT100. It's not factory, just doing panels and whatever, kind of some crazy stuff. So he was super cool for doing that, or wanting to do it and being open to it. So I appreciate that. And plus you can see we've got like a Mercedes, and when I initially came in here there's a Porsche and some other. He does good work. Anyway, we'll go over some GT100 stuff and check it out. So yeah, we were talking, I guess, the switch panel, I was struggling with where to put this, and this switch is all weird because the back part of the switch is part of these buttons. So I cut this ginormous hole, which looks, you know, not amazing. Caden was looking at the whole instrument panel here, and I forgot I had that delete plate for some other stuff on the Mustang. So we can actually put this switch in here, which I wasn't thinking of, that he just brought up. So that is actually awesome. That's a great idea.
And these pieces are just going to be welded to the rest of the center console, kind of like a shroud. So these are just going to be one piece with this, and just slide around this permanent section.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah, that looks good. The little addition here, we cut down the console.
Yep.
The plates molded in nice. The panels look good too. So like the kick plate and stuff. Yep. Oh yeah, looks good. All electronics were back there.
Yep.
Which that's nice and covered, so I don't have to
you'll
kick a fuse and break it. And then up here, oh yeah, looks good. I don't know if you guys can see.
So, you know, I made all the patterns and everything just out of paper first, and
and good.
slapped it on ABS and cut it out. So this side I tried using the same like paper patterns, but they were just a little different. So this side I got a little more filler, just a few more places. I just had to make some little adjustments.
Oh yeah, the GT100 right there. Yeah, looks good. I don't know if you guys can see that on there. A little bit of light. Etched the GT100 on that. There we go. Sweet.
Subtle.
Yeah, subtle, not too crazy. And the back plates. That'll fit the speakers that were originally, I think, on the back, like lid of the behind the back seats. So should be like the mid-range speakers. I don't know.
I mean, it's still there, a little dirty. And here the pattern's gonna be pretty simple. I'm planning on doing probably most of these panels in leather, just because it's gonna be easier to wipe down, and the suede would probably cut up and stuff. So, you know, from probably this body line up on the center console is going to be suede, probably somewhere just close to the radio thing. It's going to be suede, and then the top of that, it's going to be suede.
Nice.
I've seen examples of it. It's just a two-piece, which is it's fine. But yeah, we test fitted it. Fits good. You know, this is going to be wrapped to match, and still not sure kind of what I'm going to do there. Might run like a French seam down down the middle of it, just like the dash. Probably nothing too crazy. Probably won't do like the two-tone material on the headliner. Probably just do suede on the headliner, honestly. So
Yeah, that works.
stuff's made for headliners.
Right.
Looks great. We talked about doing either the white or blue stitch.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't really decided or put too much thought into that yet, but we have some colors if you want to look at that. That's actually really close.
I mean, yeah, that's like perfect if it's color matching that colors. I'm game for that to tie together, or if you get it in there and you're like, whatever. I mean, do whatever you think.
Yeah, I mean, right now I think the blue would probably look good.
Yeah.
Seams when I take them off and wrap them, most of it's done. I would say we're probably 65 or 75% there.
Yeah.
A couple more weeks and we'll be looking good.
Heck yeah. All right, boys. Well, we've made good progress on the old 6-liter LS. Got her nice and freshened up. We have all the kind of wearable parts replaced, and she is looking good. Painted up, ready to go in the yellow 94 OBS out in the driveway. We still have a couple little things to do. Get the coils back on. We've got some cleanup brackets from ICT that'll make everything look nice. Some different ICT brackets that'll get rid of this big clunky one for the power steering. She is looking good. So we're gonna have our intake. We did also rebuild, got O-rings and everything in the injectors and cleaned it all up. Everything was super greasy and grimy on everything, including the intake. So I think it's gonna run a lot smoother just having new, fresh, everything cleaned up type parts. So we did put the Corvette style water pump on it just because this outlet's a little better. I like how it's positioned coming out here instead of coming up for the intake. We can put a LS6, LS1 intake and it doesn't hit this. We'll see, maybe in the future we can look into that. We have our transmission over here, our 4L80. Gonna get that quick little rebuild kit and some other little stuff in it, HD2 kit. And then over here we have the front diff and the all-time or full-time four-wheel drive transfer case. We can get that conversion where it's all-time all-wheel drive. That should be good. Thanks for watching, guys. God bless and long live hot rodding.